So Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is getting reprinted in Structure Deck Soulburner. We are getting an incredible tier 1 archetype in Structure Deck Soulburner. This one Structure Deck is packed with so much value, it's not even funny. And with that, in today's video, I'll be talking about this Structure Deck and why it is most certainly the greatest Structure Deck of all time. So there are a few key reasons why this structure deck is so good, and that is for the following. First off, the structure deck creates a tier 1 deck, and second, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is getting reprinted in the structure deck. So starting with my first point that this structure deck creates a tier 1 deck, basically, if you guys didn't know what Salamangreats were, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised considering how bad they are right now, but at the same time, this deck becomes so much better and will be a tier 1 strategy after this structure deck. So it's important to know what this deck does. Basically, Salamangreats is a combo control strategy that is Cyberse typing, which basically revolves around very consistent combos in order to pull off some pretty decent boards. But the amount of resourcing this deck has the ability to do is just amazing and can definitely even put it on the same tier as Sky Striker. They're getting some new amazing cards. For example, they're getting a new level 3 that basically is an Armageddon Knight that can send any Salamangreat card from your deck to your grave, but at the same time, it can also special summon itself from the hand when a Salamangreat is sent to the graveyard. But why is it good to send Salamangreat cards to the grave? Well, because most of your monsters have some way of being utilized while in the graveyard. For example, we have Salamangreat Spinny, which is basically a level 3 that can special summon itself from hand, or you can special summon itself from the grave if you control a Salamangreat monster. How do you special summon it from hand? While you control a Salamangreat card, you can discard Spinny from your hand, and then a monster gains 500 attack. And then while in the graveyard, while you control a Salamangreat monster, you can special summon it from the grave. The deck is also revolved around the idea of reincarnation link summoning. So basically what reincarnation link summoning is where you link summon with one monster with a specific name and any other monster in order to link summon for a monster with the same name as one of your materials. And from there, the link monster gains an additional effect because it was quote unquote reincarnation link summoned. You also have just such consistency with the deck. For example, Salamangreat Mirage Stalio is an invoker for the archetype, being able to special summon any Salamangreat monster from your deck, enabling you to go into further link summon, while also giving you more utility. And as well, because it's an Xyz monster, that means you can overlay with something like Spinny and it will go back to the grave, meaning you didn't lose it when it had to be banished instead of being sent to the grave because you overlaid with it, meaning it will be sent to the graveyard instead. This deck can set up some really good disruption. For example, Salamangreat Roar is a searchable trap that you can send off of the level 3, which the name is Gazelle, and you can send Roar from deck, and when you reincarnation link summon, Roar can set itself. However, we're also getting a link monster by the name of Sunlight Wolf, which basically can add any Salamangreat spell / trap from the grave to hand. You also have consistency cards like Salamangreat Circle. You have a link one that it gets you a field spell that can help you reincarnation link summon, and so in general, this archetype just has quite a lot going for it. It may not be the most explosive deck or the most powerful deck, but it sure as heck is the most consistent, and that will be its biggest factor going into the next format where this deck becomes tier 1. It can still set up some pretty good boards. It's very reminiscent of Zodiac, as this deck relies on combos kind of like Zodiac, even though Zodiacs aren't really a combo deck. They're more control, but this is also a control deck, but just their playstyle in general is very similar. So anyways, now you guys kind of get a basic understanding of what Salamangreats do after this structure deck. But why is this structure deck so good? Well, most of the cards I mentioned are actually in this structure deck. The only card that I mentioned that is not in this structure deck is, well, Sunlight Wolf. And Sunlight Wolf is quite an important card in this strategy. However, there are ways to play this deck without Sunlight Wolf. If you guys want me to make a deck profile on a budget, like 3 structure deck variant of Salamangreats, then comment down below and I'd be happy to do that. But besides that, we're getting a link 1 that really helps the archetype out immensely. We're getting the counter trap, we're getting a quick play searcher, we're getting so many cards in this structure deck to help this archetype out, and just all of these new amazing cards combined make for a tier 1 strategy along with the already established support they had. Not to mention their Cyberse monsters, meaning any future future cyber support, also indirectly supports Salamangreats. So as you can already see by what I'm saying, there is quite a lot of value in this structure deck. I mean, again, we're getting so many good cards to support Salamangreat. There are other cards that this deck requires. For example, BladeYGO is a card that will be required for the Salamangreat archetype if you want to play it as competitively as possible. We're getting new cyber support coming into Dark Neostorm that will definitely help Salamangreats, but might honestly be redundant. It's basically a rota for the cyber's typing, but is that really relevant when the deck is already so consistent as is? One thing I do want to say real quick before we jump into my second point is, considering that this deck requires outside cards, that doesn't mean this deck will be cheap, and these outside cards might honestly be quite expensive. So if you want to get my thoughts as to if Salamangreats are worth it or not after the structure deck, including the other cards, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel and I will be making that video. Regardless, one thing I do want to compare, because I am making a bold statement that this is the greatest structure deck of all time. Before I move into my second point, let me compare this structure deck to other structure decks of the past. More specifically, Monarchs and Dinosaurs. Monarchs and Dinosaurs are arguably the two greatest structure decks of all time as of right now. Monarchs is a structure deck that basically you could build a tier 1 deck just out of 3 structure decks. You didn't need one other card, which was Kuraz, but the deck was so affordable that it just didn't matter. The deck was a solid structure deck for a budget strategy. However, we also have Dinosaurs, which the Dinosaur structure deck was revolved around giving us some crazy dinosaur support. For example, Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, Soul Eating Oviraptor. We got other cards like Lost World, and all of these cards really come back into relevance from time and time again. For example, right now we have Thunder Dragon Dinos being a deck, but in the past we have had 60 card dinos, we've had Shaddoll dinos. This deck keeps popping back up in relevance just because of how good the support has been and how good Ultimate Conductor Tyranno was as a card. But in that structure deck, we also got a reprint of Twin Twister, which was a great reprint at the time. So how is structure deck Soulburner compared to those two structure decks? Well, first off, structure deck Soulburner also produces a tier 1 strategy. Monarchs was a tier 1 strategy. Dinosaurs maybe not as much, but Dinosaurs still has been in relevance over the course of its history, so they are all kind of similar. I do think Salamangreats might be just the best strategy out of all 3 of these strategies, but that's not the point here. At the time, each of these structure decks had their own impact, and what really sets off structure deck Soulburner as better than the other structure decks may not be as much the fact that it makes a tier 1 archetype, because again, Monarchs are also a tier 1 archetype, or they were at the time, and Dinosaurs may be not a tier 1 archetype because of stuff like Zodiac, and then they got hit at the same time as Zodiac and True Draco. But the fact that this structure deck has one of the craziest reprints, if not the craziest reprint of all time, definitely sets this structure deck apart from all the rest, and that is the Ash reprint. So Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring obviously is probably one of the biggest staples right now, if not the biggest staple right now. It has died down in popularity because of the decline in hand traps in general. However, that doesn't change the fact that Ash Blossom is always a staple that you should have on you just in case, considering of its prowess, its versatility. It's just such a good hand trap in general. You definitely want to have a playset. This card has always been around $30+. Sure, at the release of Shadows in Valhalla, it was around $13, but then it quickly spiked back to $30. So really, Ash has always been kind of a pricey card. Now this structure deck looks to not only produce a tier 1 archetype, but as well give us such an incredible reprint in the form of Ash Blossom. The other big reprint I can think of at the top of my head right now, I might be missing one, comment down below if you can think of other great reprints besides this. The other great reprint I can think about as of right now that can even compare to this Ash Blossom reprint is the Maxi reprint in the Ancient Gear structure deck. That structure deck may not have been that good considering it was Ancient Gear support, but we did get a crazy reprint in the form of Maxi. I will say that that reprint was not nearly as crazy as the Ash Blossom reprint, considering the cheapest variant of Maxi was not $30 at the time and was definitely less. However, Ash is by far a must-have staple, and the fact that it's getting reprinted in this structure deck is actually kind of crazy. Technically, the card hasn't even been a card for over 2 years now. It's only been a card for less than 2 years, and concerning the magnitude and impact Ash has had on our game and just every everything relating to it, I think that this Ash Blossom reprint really puts the structure deck over the edge. You're telling me this is a tier 1 structure deck that also gives us probably the craziest reprint of all time. Even without the Ash Blossom reprint, this would have gone down as one of the top 3 best and greatest structure decks of all time. But by far, with this Ash Blossom reprint, it just puts it over the edge. This deck enables budget players to play much easier, and just in general, Salamangreats will be a much more budget-friendly option. Overall, the structure deck is the craziest mix of value, viability, and reprints that I have ever seen. I have no clue how this wouldn't be by far the greatest structure deck of all time. But that doesn't mean that this deck is worth it. So when the structure deck comes out, I'm not necessarily saying that the deck is worth it. However, if you want to see my thoughts on whether the deck will be worth it or not, you'll have to subscribe in order to find out when the structure deck comes out. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to support me further than just watching my YouTube videos, go down into the description and support me on Patreon. It helps out quite immensely. As well, if you guys want to talk to me further than just my YouTube comment section, go down into the description and join my Discord server. Thank you guys so much for watching, and with that, I hope to see you soon.